Welcome to the Strategy Builder 301 event. I do need to read a very quick disclaimer as we get started here. It is important to understand there is substantial risk in trading commodity future contracts or foreign currency. You should carefully consider whether such trading is suitable for you. This will depend on your specific circumstance and financial resources. It is possible to lose all of the funds deposited with your broker. You can incur losses beyond these amounts. Inquire at brokerage support at NinjaTrader.com if you'd like more information or if you'd like to get a copy of the CFTC full risk disclosure. And keep in mind that these training webinars are not a solicitation nor a recommendation, but are educational. All right, now that that's out of the way, I'm going to throw a few links into the room real quick. We're going to be using NinjaTrader 8 today. If you haven't downloaded, please follow the link here so you can follow along with these webinars. I'm also going to throw in links here to our social media, our Twitter page, our Facebook, as well as the NinjaTrader blog. Okay, so today we're going to be kind of going over a low-level overview of what's available in the Strategy Builder. And we'll use some simple tools to make a very simple script, basically the sample MA crossover, just to kind of get an idea of how those tools would be used. And then at the last thing, we'll learn how to actually turn the strategy on and run it on a chart or on the strategies tab of the control center. So behind the scenes here, I've got NinjaTrader running. And you'll find the strategy builder from the new menu. So we'll start in new, go down here to strategy builder all the way at the bottom. Let me bring this into view for everyone. Okay, so as we start our strategy, the very first thing we're going to have to do is name our strategy. The name of your strategy must be a unique name. So every strategy has to have a different name. Included with NinjaTrader is the sample MA crossover. Just to make sure my name is unique, I'm going to call mine the simple MA crossover. Now this description the user is going to see when they select your strategy and click the I that's at the top of the strategies window, which is just more information about it. Anything the author wants to tell the user, I'll just write simple moving average crossover strategy here. Now, if you do want to stop editing your script, you can click compile. That's going to save your work and also turn it into computer code so that it can actually be run. You'll see a strategy generated successfully. And at any time, if you want to close the strategy builder and restart your strategy, you can reopen the strategy builder. Anything currently locked for editing in the strategy builder, you'll see listed here in the continue. So we can select our strategy and keep working on it. I've moved on to the default properties page. So these are some fundamental properties that are available to all strategies and have some control over what happens with orders and what happens when your strategy starts, things like that. At the very top here, we have our calculate setting. Calculate is going to control when the logic is run. So on the conditions and actions section here, that's where our actual logic is going to go. So we can control if this is going to run every time the bar closes, or if we'd like it to run in real time on every single received tick, we can choose on each tick. We also have on price change. This is to allow your strategy to update in real time, but not for every received tick, only when the prices change. So generally the prices are going to change a lot less than ticks are being received. And your indicators themselves are most likely going to update when the price changes, things like the SMA or Bollinger. Those are going to update when the price changes. They don't necessarily need to receive each tick. But for there are indicators that do receive volume, and they do need to update on each tick. And if you are using one of those indicators, like the VOL indicator, the volume indicator, or anything else that collects volume, for that you probably would want to use the on each tick setting. But if you're not analyzing each tick and you still want it to run in real time, on price change is a suitable option for allowing your strategy to run in real time instead of waiting for the bar to close before this code is evaluated. want to open up more properties here. We've got our entries per direction and entry handling, which work in tandem. Entry handling is going to control the number of new orders that can be placed once a position is taken up to the numbers of entries per direction. We've got two settings for this, all entries, unique entries. And what this is referring to is the signal name for the orders. So if you have it set to all entries, it doesn't matter what the name is, it's only going to allow this many entries per direction no matter what the signal name is. But if we set it to unique entries, then it allows us one of each entry. So if we have signal, maybe we call our first entry entry 1, we call our second entry entry 2, and then we have our entries per direction set to 2. Well, we get 2 of each of those, which gives us a total of 4 orders. We'll get 2 of entry 1 and 2 of entry 2. So that's how these work together. The point of this is basically to keep your strategy, which may have the condition true multiple bars in a row, from placing too many orders and getting you too far into that position. So this will basically just ignore orders after the entries per direction is met, meaning that the position is actually taken. From that point forward, it'll just ignore any further orders, and it'll give you a message as well in the output window if you have the trace orders on. I'll talk about that in just a moment. We've got our exit on close and exit on close seconds. If you don't want to be in an overnight position, you can have your strategy automatically close out your position and will cancel any working orders however many seconds before the end of the session that you specify here. You want to make sure you're in before the end of the sessions. That way you can still put orders in and actually get out of that position. You don't have to. If you want to stay in an overnight position, you can disable the exit on session close. But if you're trading futures, you may have different margin requirements. So you may have reasons to not be in that overnight session. So that option is available for you. Moving down, fill limit orders on touch. Something that's only used for backtesting. So when you're in the strategy analyzer and you're running a backtest, those orders are not leaving your computer. So they don't have to travel through the internet. They're not actually being placed on an account. They're theoretical virtual orders. We're filling them based on a fill algorithm. With limit orders, however, in the real world, you place a limit order and it is going to have a place in line, and you may not be first in line. So let's say it's a really, really slow moving market. And in your really slow moving market, the price comes and it actually touches your limit, but then it immediately goes back in reverse the way it came, and your order doesn't fill. So what happened there is, even though the price came down to your order, right, you just weren't at the front of the line to get a fill right away. Had the price stayed there and more transactions occurred, eventually you probably would have gotten a fill on that price. The moment it ticks below that, it's going to have filled everybody at the price level before it. So if the price ticks through, then you know for sure you got a fill. So in our back test, we can basically turn this on or off. If you want it so that you're similar to a slow moving market, just leave this turned off, because it's going to require that the price tick through the limit for the order to fill. If you are in a fast moving market with lots of volume, you may want to have this turned on so that the moment the price comes and touches the limit order, it's filled. It doesn't require that tick through. All right, moving bars look back. When you add a secondary series, and this affects secondary series only, we only load up the last 256 bars by default, just for efficiency. For the most part, a lot of scripts aren't going to look that far back in history, which means we don't have to load too much of that data if you're only calling 1 or 2 bars ago. If you're calling, 5 bars ago to see what the high was 5 bars ago on a secondary series, that's fine. However, the issue comes when you're trying to call more than 256 bars ago. Maybe you're on a 1-minute chart and you're calling the high from yesterday. So that's going to be, a couple thousand bars ago. At that point, that would cause an error from that secondary series, and we would want to set this to infinite. So this is applied to things that are on the next page. I'll go ahead and flip over. Additional data, which I'll talk about in a moment. If you want to add additional data series to your script, you can do so. It will be affected by this maximum bars lookback option here. So just something to keep in mind. We don't get questions on this often, um, but if you see an error message when you're trying to call that far back, that might be a tip off to increase that. Minimum bars required here. If you throw indicators on a chart, you may notice that a lot of the system indicators that come with NinjaTrader don't start plotting until after 20 bars. And it's basically just to give them some data to work with before they actually start producing values. So the strategy here has the same thing, a minimum bars required before it starts trading. And it's basically to give those indicators a chance to start processing data, start getting better accurate values before it actually starts making decisions and placing orders. If you wanted to place orders on the very first bar, you can set this to a 1, and it'll start placing orders on the very first bar. Order fill resolution. Again, only used for back testing. As we're doing our back testing, we only know the open, high, low, and close of the bar. Basically, that's what your historical minute data is. It's the open, high, low, and close during that minute. What that means is we don't know what happened during that minute. We know the high that was reached, we know the open it had, we know the close that it had, but we don't know how the price moved up and down during that minute. Meaning as you place your order, we don't know the exact time, we don't know the exact tick it would have actually filled with. Now, that's going to be the standard resolution there. It's going to be the fastest way to backtest your script. It's not going to have extremely high accuracy because we only know those 4 price points. We can tell if it's between, the high and the open or the low and the open, so we can kind of decide what side of the bar it would be on, but we have no idea where it filled inside of the bar. Now with NinjaTrader 7, and what you can still do in NinjaTrader 8, is you can add a 1-tick series to the script and place your orders to that 1-tick series. And by doing so, NinjaTrader will load up all of that tick data and increase the accuracy of those fill prices. For NinjaTrader 8, we've made this new tool called Order Fill Resolution. And it's basically to try and implement that 1-tick added granularity on your behalf. So you don't have to code it into your script. And that way you can keep using the strategy builder and you don't have to unlock the script. So that's kind of the point of this, is so that you can use this while you have a strategy in the strategy builder. And what we'll do is we'll add that 1-tick series in behind the scenes. We'll place your orders to that 1-tick series, and then we'll know more precisely the exact tick, time, and price that order would have filled while that bar was open. Moving down to slippage. So this is another real world versus backtest scenario. So in the real world, you place a market order. That market order has to travel through the internet. First of all, it has to be processed by your computer. NinjaTrader forms that into an order and then sends a transmission through the internet to your broker. Your broker receives that transmission and they look at your account, decide that your account is in good standing, and from there they forward your order onto the exchange. Usually they're pretty close to the exchange typically, but there's still going to be some travel time. The exchange receives the order. From there, they put it on their exchange servers, and it starts working and is now able to trade with other people. So that's a process. It takes time for that to happen. It's usually pretty fast. The further you are away from this brokerage servers, the longer it's going to take for your transmission to get there, which means the more chances there are that the price could change by the time your order is actually working on the exchange servers. If you're half a world away, it could take a few more seconds than someone who's right next to the exchange. So that is known as slippage, the price change that happens before your order is received on the exchange servers. That is known as slippage. In backtest, of course, these orders are not leaving your computer. If in the real world you're getting slippage on market orders, maybe you want to simulate that slippage in your backtesting as well so you get some more realistic results. So if you want to add 1 or 2 ticks or subtract 1 or 2 ticks, depending on the order type, you can add a little bit of that slippage in there for your backtesting. Okay, start behavior. So when you first start your strategy, it is going to process all of the historical data first, and it's going to do the equivalent of a backtest. So as you're first turning your strategy on, it basically does a backtest with the historical data. That backtest may leave off in a position. You may still be in an open position when the historical data has been processed. So, let's say that you turned the strategy on yesterday or something. If it had been left running, it would be in a position right now. So we need to know what to do with that, because maybe your account is flat and the strategy thinks it should be long one. So we have a few different options here for what we're going to do with that, with the strategy account and with the, the strategy position and the account position. So these are going to be separate. Your account will have a position, your strategy will have a separate position. With the default setting here, wait until flat, this is assuming that your account is also starting flat. And basically, it's going to wait until a virtual order closes that historical position before it starts placing any real-time trades. So that way, your account is flat, your strategy starts out long one. The very first order it places, you don't want it to be a sell order to make the strategy flat and have that be a real-time order, because that would make your account short one, right? So if you have your account start flat, you use the wait until flat setting, your first live trade will go to both the account and to the strategy, and they'll be in sync. They'll start up synchronized as long as your account is flat. If you have, let's say that you've run your strategy and you turn it off and you want to turn it back on and you want it to resume the position that it was in, right? So now you ran it before, and when you turned it off, your position was long two for your account and your strategy. And then you turn the strategy off and you turn it back on. You don't want to wait until it's flat now, because your account still has that position in it. You want it to resume that position if it can. So that's what the immediately submit is going to do. It's going to assume that your account position is right. It is going to run through the historical data. Whatever position is left off of the historical data, it's just going to run with that. So if the account and strategy are not in sync when using this, they will not become in sync. They will stay out of sync. So let's say that your account's flat. You use immediately submit. Your strategy processes and it thinks it should be long two. It just assumes it's long two, and it assumes that your account is also long two, even if it's not. So the very first time it places an order, it places a close order for two, which is a sell, and it takes your account short. The last two options here are the synchronized account options. So with both of those scenarios, you can either wait until you're flat, and when it is flat, and it starts trading live, you can have it sync your account to whatever your strategy is. They'll stay in sync that way. The immediately submit, if your account is flat and your strategy starts out as long two, well, it's going to send a buy order for two to make sure the account matches the strategy, and those two are going to be in sync as you run your strategy. So a few different options there you have for the start behavior. Let's go ahead and move down to stops and targets. With stops and targets, this is a control for the last page there, the stops and targets page. When you place multiple stops and targets, maybe you've got a target for entry one, a target for entry two, a target for entry three. You can choose whether or not each one of those is going to cover the entire position and just update the quantity and adjust the price of just that one stop and target. Or you can have them staggered and have each stop and target at different prices. So that buy strategy position, that's going to update a single stop and target, update the quantity, and update the price of it. The per entry execution, for each one of those individual orders, it's going to have a different stop and target. So you have a choice of however you would like that. Time and force, this is a code sent to your broker that goes with each order. You will need to check with your broker to make sure that they accept these codes. Day means that the order is going to expire at the end of the day. GTC is good till canceled, and there may be a maximum number of days your broker allows. You'll want to check with your broker about that. But basically, it stays open until you manually cancel it. And then there's GTD, which is good till date. Now, this can't be actually used in the strategy builder. The value is still there because this is used in other places. Let's say you were on the Superdome or you were on the chart trader. You can actually on those windows specify a date that you want that order to expire. It's just the strategy builder is not complex enough to be able to select the time and date for each one of those orders is the issue with that. The last thing here is trace orders. And this is a really helpful tool for understanding the behavior. It tells you when orders are being submitted, the time that orders are being submitted. It tells you when orders are being ignored, which is helpful if you are expecting an order and you're not seeing it. Orders can be ignored for different reasons, such as the minimum bars required not being met, or the entries per direction already being met. Both of those can cause orders to be ignored. So if you want to know if orders are being ignored, turn on trace orders and rerun the script. That'll go to the NinjaScript output window. So new NinjaScript output. And yeah, it tells you when orders are submitted, when orders are ignored, when orders are automatically canceled. So if you have orders being canceled, that's trace orders will tell you about that as well. Okay, a lot of stuff there. Let's go ahead and ask a question. If you have questions, I welcome those in the room. I'll during these breaks here, I'll take a moment to answer any questions I see in the chat. Question here is, if I want my strategy to evaluate in real time, what should the calculate property be set to? This is multiple choice. On bar close, on each tick, or on price change? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and stop the poll here. Okay, so the two correct answers would be on each tick. Now that's gonna be more CPU intensive because it's gonna be processing for every received tick. And then you have on price change, which is still in real time, but just only when the price changes, and you don't have to have it processed for every single received tick. All right. Let's move on to the additional data page. So with additional data, you can add in another series. Maybe you want to add in another time frame. Maybe you want to add in another instrument, place orders to 2 instruments. Or maybe you want to add in an index and check the index, see how the index is performing, and place orders on another instrument based on how that index is performing. So here in the additional data, you can add in these extra series here. If you want to select an instrument, you can. You can choose ask, bid, or last for the data type, just like you can in the data series window. For the type, though, we only allow the basic bar types. If you've got custom bar types, the strategy builder is just not complex enough to handle those. It is possible to make a strategy that uses those, but it would require unlocking your script. So you get the basic bar types are available here, and then the value for that. Now, if you don't want to change the instrument, you only want a different time frame, you can check this box here for use primary instrument. It'll gray these out so you no longer have to change the instrument, and then you can just choose another bar type or another interval. Some users will add in a 60-minute series and use that for their indicator inputs. So that might be one reason. Down below here in the custom series, so a series is going to have, one slot for every bar in the chart. A custom series is like an empty series that you can stuff with your own values. Once again, it is going to have a value for every single bar in the chart. But let's say that you're doing some calculations or something like that, or wanting to store some values, you can do that, and it'll give you a slot for your values for every bar. All right, moving on to the inputs and variables. So inputs and variables are basically the same thing. Inputs, however, are variables that the user is allowed to set in the strategy parameters, while the variables are for your use and cannot be set by the user. So maybe you just need to remember something. You need to remember if an event happened, or remember how many bars ago something happened, or remember a price, such as you want to have an action happen when a certain price is reached. And anytime you've got something you need to remember, you can use a variable for that, and the user can't change it, the value there for it. The types available here, I've clicked add. We'll go into this for just a moment. We've got int, actually I'll start at the top, bool. A bool is a true or a false value. So If you want to say, did this particular action happen? True. And then use that as another condition. Say, that previous action needed to have happened. This bool is going to let you store that value. Then we have double. A double is any number with a decimal. So if it's 1.1 or negative 1.1, both of those are going to be doubles because of that decimal. I'm going to skip down to int. Int is any whole number without a decimal. So 1 or negative 1, as long as there's no decimal on it, that's going to be an int, which is short for integer. Moving back up to string. A string is a collection of characters. A sentence, a label, a name, a message, all of those are going to be strings. A description, that's going to be a string as well. Last, we have time. So let's say that we want the user to control the hours for something, or to control the start and end times. Those are going to be your time controls to let the user set a time. We're going to need a couple of these inputs. So I'm going to start adding one here. We're going to have a moving average. We're going to have two of those. We're going to have a fast and slow moving average. And we're going to allow the user to control the number of bars for those fast and slow moving averages. So I'm going to make a fast period. I'm going to default this to 7. And this is going to, so the default value will be what first appears in the strategy window. The user from there will be able to change that to whatever they would like. The minimum here is the smallest value you're willing to accept for this. You can put in a negative here. So if you want to put in negative 999, that's fine. But if you put in 1, the user has to type in something that's 1 or higher, which makes sense for a period. You don't want to have a negative number of bars. It doesn't really make sense for calling an SMA. So this will be the number of bars for fast moving average. And we need at least 1 bar. So I'm going to go ahead and add that in. We're going to add in a stop loss as well. So I'm going to hit add. We'll add in, excuse me, not a stop loss, a slow period is what I meant to say. So I'll add in a slow period. I'll default this to twice the length, 14. And this will be the number of bars for the slow moving average. All right, so we've got a couple of controls for our user there to control the SMAs. We will have a stop loss and profit target. So I also want the user to control how far away those are. So let's add in a profit target. We'll call it profit distance. I'm going to default this to 20 ticks. And this will represent the number of ticks from entry target is placed. Now, for this description, I can copy and paste this to save a little bit of time here. Just right-click on it and select copy. Click OK. I'm going to add in that stop distance now for the stop loss. I'm going to default this to 10. And for the description, I'm going to paste that description and change the word target to stop. Click OK. I personally don't need any variables for this particular script. All of the types are the same, however. But again, these are not for the user to use. These are for you to remember things if you need to. So they're just there for your storage use. A series has a value for every bar in the chart. Your variable is just one value. So it's just that one variable value. Okay, I'm moving on to conditions and actions. Before I do though, let's launch a quick poll here. What is one reason that a variable might be used? Also multiple choice. To print the current position. To allow the user to set a value for a called indicator. To exit a trade with a market order. Or to set the amount of ticks away from entry a stop loss will be placed. I don't want to spend too much time on it. I'm going to go ahead and stop the poll here. Oh, looks like some people are answering. I'll pause for just a moment. Make sure everybody can get their vote in. Okay, let's go ahead and cut it here. So one reason a variable might be used, well, to allow the user to call a value for an indicator. That's definitely one reason. We're doing that with the fast and slow SMAs. And to set the amount of ticks away from entry, a stop loss will be placed. That's what we're going to be doing with that profit and stop distance. Okay, so conditions and actions, this is the meat and potatoes. This is where the logic actually happens. The logic is going to be updated when the bar updates, either on bar close, on price change, or on each tick. It's going to go through these conditions down here. You can add multiple sets of conditions. It's going to check all of the conditions in set 1 and do all of the actions in set 1. And then it's going to do set 2 and then set 3. Each set is evaluated in order and independently. So if set 1 evaluates as false, it's not going to affect whether or not set 2 is evaluated. If set 2 is true, it's still going to have its actions taken. At the top left, we have a drop down here for if all and if any. This is a way of combining the conditions with either ors or ands. Your if all is going to be conjoining them with ands, condition 1 and condition 2 and condition 3 and condition 4. If all of the conditions are true, then I want the action down below to happen. With the if any, these are joined with ors. If condition 1 or condition 2 or condition 3, if any one of those is true and the others are not, or it doesn't matter if the others are not, if any one of them is true, then we're going to trigger the action down below. Now, over here we have this group. This group allows us to add the same kind of conditions, but we can group these together. And we can mix and match that if any and if all. So we can say if all of the conditions in group 1 and if any of the conditions in group 2. So that way you can have, maybe you only want to trade between, 9 and 4 or something, and the SMA has to be rising in group 1, but then you've got a whole bunch of other triggers in group 2 where any of them could be true, and then it go ahead and kick off your order. So you can mix and match these different condition groups, and you can make some pretty powerful logic. Computers in general, deep down, they basically work off of and or logic gates. So it's very similar to how programming in general works, just really, really simplified. I'm going to click add here to add a condition. I'll stretch that a little. So the way this works is we're going to take an object on the left, we're going to compare it with an object on the right, and what's in the center is how we're comparing it. So if we want to have an indicator crossing a price, or we want to have some property be true, let's go through these sections here. I'm going to select the MACD indicator because it has a few different plots we can talk about. At the top here, we've got the input series. So if you've added in an extra data series, hit the edit input and you'll see your extra data series listed at the top here if you've added one. Or you can choose another indicator, or you can choose one of the price types like the open, high, low, close, median, open, typical, weighted. So you can change what data is being fed into that indicator. You can totally send an indicator into another indicator if you want and daisy chain them. Let's go down to bars ago. This is which value from the MACD do you want? Bars ago 0 is the most recent updated bar. So that's 0 bars ago. A 1 would be the previous bar. A 2 would be 2 bars before that. Just a heads up, when you're using cross above, it is going to ignore your bars ago settings because at this point it's no longer looking at specific bars, but instead looking at 2 bars. It's looking at the previous bar and the current bar for 2 different series. So it no longer uses that bars ago value whenever you're using cross above or cross below. Plot on chart here. This is very useful in that it will automatically add the indicator to the chart if your strategy is added to a chart automatically. And that way it's using all of the same settings the strategy is using, and you don't have the chance to put the indicator on the chart using different values or using a different data series or something like that. It's going to have the exact same plot values on the chart that your strategy sees. The parameters here, these are the inputs that the SMA has declared, and the MACD has declared inside of itself. Just like we have our fast period, slow period, profit distance, stop distance, the MACD has a fast, slow, and smooth. Those are its inputs. And then we have the value plot. This is actually which plot do you want from the MACD. The MACD has 3 different plots here. it's got the average plot, the MACD plot, and the diff plot. If you want to know if the MACD plot is crossing above the average plot, you can select those plots on each side. So maybe on the left, it'll have MACD selected, crossing above the average plot. So you can choose whichever plot from an indicator you want the values from. The colors here are the colors of how these plots are going to appear once it's added with plot on chart. And at the bottom, our offset allows us to add or subtract from the value produced by the MACD for that plot. This is the only math available in the Strategy Builder basically whatsoever. There is no other math anywhere else. With arithmetic selected, you can add, subtract, the asterisk is multiply, the / is divide. And again, this is literally the only math available in the Strategy Builder. There's no other math available. And this is only available to series. So it's not available to numbers that are hard numbers or just single value numbers. It's only available to series. Just something to keep in mind. I'm going to move down to the price section. Pretty self-explanatory. One thing I'll mention is that the close, high, low, median, open, typical, volume, those are all series. The ask and bid are not series. These are snapshots of what the current bid and current ask are, or the current ask and current bid volume. So these don't have bars ago values because they are not series. They're just snapshots. And I guess I should say that the offset is available to these as well. I believe the ask and bid is going to be the only place you see that offset that's not a series. Okay, going down to the strategy section here, there's things in here about your strategy, such as your average position price. This is your entry point. So if you enter at 100 and 110, your entry point's 105. Basically, it's the average of all of the orders that make up that position. You've got your current position size. This is going to evaluate as a numeric value or anything else that is a numeric value. If you're long 2, this is going to be a 2. Then you've got your current market position, and that is going to evaluate on the right as a market position in the strategy section. You can be long, short, or flat. Your default order quantity is actually set by the user and is going to be a numeric value. As you're actually submitting your orders, you have a choice of whether or not to use the default quantity that the user has selected, or you can overwrite it with any value you want. If you wanted to always place an order quantity of 5, you can force that. If you want the user to allow them to set the quantity, so as they change instruments, they change the number of contracts that would be particular to that instrument, then you would leave the orders being placed with that default order quantity, and the user can change that in the strategy settings. Realized P&L is all closed trades, anything that's got an entry and an exit. Your unrealized P&L is any open trades, anything that has an entry but no exit and is still making up part of your position. It'll tell you basically your gain or loss on your open position with that. Moving on to miscellaneous. In miscellaneous, we have bar since entry, bar since exit. These both return a numeric value. And they're telling you how many bars it's been since the last entry or the last exit has occurred. If there has never been an entry, the bar since entry will return -1. Same with bar since exit. If there has never been an exit, it will return a -1. Cross above and cross below, these are located here in the miscellaneous because you can have these be equal to true or false. So in the center, this is basically only looking for a true cross above, but if you want to know if a cross didn't happen, you could say cross above equals false and cross below equals false, and you can know that there was no cross in either direction. Current bar is your current bar number. As it starts processing the very first historical bar, that's bar 0. And then the next bar is bar 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Sometimes it's helpful to save the current bar number to a variable because you need to know how many bars ago it has been since an action has occurred, or something along those lines. So current bar is your current bar number. Current state on the right is going to evaluate as a state. This is going to be historical, running through that historical data, transitioning into real time, and then real time. Then we've got falling, and we also have a rising here. You set the series for this, and it'll evaluate as either a true or false. So this will be equals or not equals to true or false. And if the current bar's value is less than the previous bar's value for that series, it is falling. If it is greater than the previous bar's series, it is rising. Then we have first bar of session. A good time to reset things is on the first bar of a new session. Maybe you are collecting P&L, or you want to have a daily loss limit or something like that. On the new session, you want to reset things so it can start placing orders again. So this is going to evaluate as a true or false and give you the opportunity to reset things if you want to on the first bar of a new session. Highest bar and lowest bar. These are giving you a bar number. They aren't giving you the actual high or the actual low. They are giving you the bar number that had the highest high on it, or the bar number that had the lowest low on it. So it's telling you about that bar number, not about the actual high. If you want the largest and smallest values in a series, use the min and max that is in the indicators section. So max is going to give you the actual value. It's going to give you the actual highest value in that series. The min's going to give you the actual lowest value instead of giving you a bar number that had that lowest value. All right. Slope. Slope is a little calculator that evaluates as a numeric value. You give it a start point and an end point, and it'll tell you from those 2 points on the chart what the slope is using rise over run. Then we have, let's move on to the time section. In our time section, we've got date series. This is the date of the bar. So today would be October 1st is what that would return. October 1st, 2020. Date value, this is going to be a date that you select. So let's say that you wanted to start trading after November. You could say that the date value, the date series has to be greater than, choose date value and choose November 1st there. Same with time series. Time series is the time of the bar. Time value is a time value you type in. Let's use this to create a very simple time filter, is what we call that. And we'll make it so our strategy is only able to trade between 9 and 4. So I'm going to say that as long as the time series is greater than or equal to, and on the right I'll choose time value and put in 9 a.m. and I'll click OK. So this is looking at the time being greater than 9. And I'm going to add a second condition here that the time series also has to be less than 4 p.m. So it has to be greater than 9, and we're also going to add has to be less than 4 p.m. Now I've got a time filter, and the action below can only occur if it's between these set of hours. Very simple time filter there. Let's go ahead and remove that. At the very bottom, we have our user inputs. If you want to have a user input and you just need to check to see what the value is, maybe it's a true or a false, and you need to know whether you're going to allow this condition based on the user input, you can find all of the user inputs here in this list. They're going to evaluate however type of object you've created them as. So they may be a true or false, they may be a numeric value. It just depends on what kind, it may be a time. So it just depends on what kind of object you've created there. Let's go down to the do the following. In the do the following, we can draw on the chart any of the drawing objects you would normally use on a chart that you would do with your mouse. You can draw in the code. You'll need to give it the anchors, which is going to be the number of bars ago and then the price for that. And you're going to have to put each one of those anchors the same way that you would click to place those anchors on the chart. You can set the background color behind the chart. You can set the bar color of the bar itself. You can set the candle outline color around the bar. You can draw text above or below the bar. let's go down to the miscellaneous section. You can trigger an alert to the alerts log. So if you go to new and then alerts log, you can send alerts to that. You can play a sound with that alert log if you want. You can also just play the sound without having the alert show in the alerts window if you want that as well. Now we do have the option to log here. I would recommend that you only use log if you're trying to send a message to the user or to the NinjaTrader staff. So these logs are actually going to be logged in the NinjaTrader log. And we generally use those for doing support with our customers. So if you have a message you're trying to send there, like you can't run this on this particular bar type, that might be a good message to actually send to the log. However, if you're trying to debug your script and you just want to get some information about what is happening, use print instead. So print is there for you to just print out values so that you can debug your script and get all kinds of information about. Using prints is extremely helpful. You can print anything that you can select here in the condition builder. So maybe you can print out the user values, you can print out the time. Most of the time when I start doing my print, the first thing I do is I print the time series. And I print the time series, and sometimes I'll print the date, just depending on what I'm looking at as well. But I want to know on what bar certain things are happening on, right? So maybe I want to know what the SMA was at 5 o'clock to see why my condition wasn't true. So you can put all the values that you would normally use in your conditions here in the prints. These prints will go to the output window, and they will tell you everything you need to know about what's going on with those variables and values. Moving down, we've got share. If you want to upload to Twitter, we have share services. You can also use this to, let's see, what other share services? We used to have a Facebook one, but that one's not there anymore. But anyway, you can even make your own share services scripts. So if you're clever and you have your own social media you want to upload to, you can make your own share script and you can, on particular actions, upload it to your favorite social media if you want to. We've also got send mail. This sends an email. This requires an email share service to be set up with SMTP settings. So you have to set up like your Gmail or something to allow you to send emails. But once you've got your email set up so that NinjaTrader can send emails through your email, you can send an email anytime an action happens. A lot of users will use this to send a text message to their cell phone. So that's kind of handy if you want to do that. At the very bottom, that's you have your order management. This is where you actually place the orders. You've got a market order, limit order, market if touched, stop limit, stop market. Now, when we're naming our order, this is when we're placing our order, we have the signal name. This is the name of our order as it appears on the chart, but is also used when we want to attach an exit order to an entry order. So let's say that you've got 3 entries, entry 1, entry 2, entry 3, and you want to have 3 different stop targets. So each one of your stop and targets will use a from entry signal that will need to match the signal name of your entry. Let's take a look. So I've made entry 1. That's our first entry. I'll do entry 2. That's our second entry. To be able to put in both of these entries, I do need to go back to default properties, set entries per direction to 2, or I can choose to say unique entries. Let me get one of each one of those unique signal names. So now that I have that set to unique entries, I will be allowed to have both of these. And in set 2, if I want to exit just one of those, I use the from entry signal. The key word is from. Focus on the word from. Where is this entry from? Entry 1. So what we're doing here is we're now attaching the from entry signal of our exit long to enter long entry 1. It won't exit this second one, which means you'll basically scale out of your position by a quantity of 1 without doing both of them. So we are attaching the exit of 1 to the, we are attaching the from entry signal to the signal name of the entry. All right, so from entry signal is on the exit, signal name is on the entry. Okay, a lot of information there. We're about to build our script. Before I do that though, what is needed to have an exit order exit a specific entry order? 1, use the indicator as the price for the exit order. Or 2, use the the exit's signal name has to match the entry's signal name. Or 3, the entry's signal name must match the let me say that again. The entry's signal name must match the exit's from entry signal. Or 4, the exit order must be in the same conditions set as the entry order. It looks like most people have stopped voting. I'm going to go ahead and stop the poll. We have one more vote coming in. Let me pause for a second. All right, let's go ahead and end the poll here. The answer is going to be the third answer. The key word here is the from. The entry's signal name must match the exit order's from entry signal. So it's that from entry that is the key that we need to focus on there. Another question before we move on. What tools would I use to trigger an order once at 9:05 a.m. every day on a 5-minute chart? In the time section, choose time series. Compare this on the right in the time section with time value. Or in the miscellaneous section, select the session break. Compare this with session miscellaneous true. Or in the indicator section, choose the current day open high low indicator. Compare this with miscellaneous true. Or just turn the script on in the morning. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop the poll for this one. So the first answer is going to be correct in the time series, in the time section, choose time series. That's the time of the bar. And you're going to be comparing that with the time value on the right. That's your hard-coded time that you're going to set to 9:05. All right. So let's go through and actually build some script here. Let's go and add a condition. The set 1 is going to be our cross above. So I'm going to go in the conditions. We'll go down to the SMA. I'm going to stretch this window out a little bit so everybody can see. Let's move that up a little bit. Okay, on the left, I have selected the SMA indicator. I'm going to use the default input. I do want to check the box here for plot on chart. We want that to automatically appear in the chart when we start it up. For the period, I'm going to have this go to the user input fast period. So I'm clicking set here. I don't know if you saw that. I click set in the value, go to our user input, select that fast period. Now the user has control over this SMA. For the color to represent fast, I am going to color this red. No offset though. In the center, I'm going to choose cross above. On the right, choosing the SMA again. There it is. Checking the box for plot on chart. For the period, we'll hit set, go to our user input, slow period. And for the color, to represent slow, I am going to choose blue. So there we go. There's our first condition. When the SMA with the fast period crosses above the SMA with the slow period within 1 bar. Down below in the do the following, we're going to add enter a long position there. Now I don't have to use that signal name. I only use the signal name basically if I need to have multiple entries and exits. If I just have the one entry and exit, I don't really need to have unique signal names. But yeah, you mostly want to use that if you have exits you want to attach to specific entries with that from entry signal. I can copy and paste this condition. So I don't have to set that up again. I'm going to just right click on the condition up here, click copy, come over here to set to. I'm going to right click and select paste. And then I'm going to hit edit on this and just change the cross above to a cross below. All these other settings are going to stay the same. We just want the opposite condition. For the do the following, I'm going to remove that. We were just playing with that a moment ago. We'll empty that out. And then for the do the following, I'm going to enter into a short position. Okay, so please note that I am crossing directly from long to short, and I am not calling exit long before calling enter short. This is a very common issue. NinjaTrader is going to manage your position when you're using the managed approach. Everything in the strategy builder is using that managed approach. And what that means is that if you're in a long position and you call enter short, we will see your long position. We will send a order called close position. You'll actually see the order called close position on your chart. We're going to close that position for you. We're going to manage that position for you, which is why it's called the managed approach. And then we're going to send your short order, and that's going to flip your position from long to short. What will happen if you call your exit first and then your enter at the same time is you're going to get 3 orders instead of 2, right? You're going to get your exit long. However, that order takes a moment to fill. But before that happens, you're calling the enter short. We see the position has not changed because that exit long hasn't filled yet. So again, we call close position. That's the second order. And then your enter short becomes the third order. So you end up with either one of two things. Either A, your position reverses and doubles. So if you go from long 2, you end up short 4. Or you're going to get an overfill, and it's going to cause an error that will completely disable your strategy. And you'll see that error appear in the the log tab of the control center. So that's something to watch out for. In the managed approach, we do not call an exit and an entry at the same time. Just call the entry. We'll figure everything else out for you. We'll make sure that we get you flipped over. Okay, let's go to the last page here for stops and targets. We'll run our strategy and we'll call it a day. So on the stops and targets here, on the very first page, the default properties page, we briefly touched on how we can have the stop and target be one stop and target that's updated for the entire strategy position, where it just updates the quantity and the price. That's going to be our parabolic stop total position, profit target total position, stop loss total position. That's where you have one stop and target, and we just update the quantity to make sure we cover that whole position every time you place a new entry order. The individual parabolic stop, profit target, stop loss, trailing stop, these are the individual ones. So if you're applying those to each individual order, that's where you can apply those. Now your parabolic stop is going to use the behavior of the parabolic SAR indicator. It will only move toward the market price. It's never going to move away from the market price, but it's going to be, it's not exactly like a trail ticks for ticks up. The parabolic stop is going to have like this curve to it. So put the parabolic SAR on your chart if you kind of want to get an idea of the kind of curve that I'm talking about. Profit target, let's see here. We've got a mode. So you've got currency, percent. Currency is an amount of profit and loss. So if you want to lose $100 or gain $100, that's currency. Percent is percent from the current price. You know, if the price is 1,000 and you put in percent here of 0.01, it's going to give you 100. And by the way, that percent is actually written as a decimal. So 0.01 would actually be 1%. 0.1 would be 10%, and then a 1 would be 100%. Then we have price. This is an exact price, and by the way, you cannot use price unless you are literally typing in a price here. If you type in 300, that's fine, but you cannot use a price such as the close price here. The problem is that we set these before the strategy starts. It's not going to be updating from data. You have to unlock the script if you want to use series information in setting the price. So basically here in the strategy builder, basically I only recommend using ticks. Or ticks or percent. Percent is fine too. So we're going to set ours to ticks. I'm going to go to my user input and go to my profit distance, which is initially going to be 10 ticks. And I'm going to click add to add that in. We'll hit add to add in a stop loss. The only new thing here is the simulated stop. The simulated stop is simply just not going to submit your order until it's touched. That way it's not actually working on the brokerage servers, and it kind of hides that order and doesn't actually submit it until it's time for that order to fill, which also means it's not using your margin as well by sitting and being a working order. Again, I'm going to use a number of ticks. Pips and ticks are interchangeable. Pips is just used for things that use that fractional notation. The ZB is an example of an instrument that has that little apostrophe on it, which is the fractional notation. But you use pips anytime you're using one of those instrument types. For the value, we'll set this to our user input stop distance. Click OK. And we did it. We made it all the way through. We've got a working script. Let's actually run this last thing here. So I've hit the compile button. That actually saves our work and allows us to actually run this. I'm going to open up a new chart here. We'll do ES. 1 minute is fine. And I'm going to flip this over to the Strategies tab of the Control Center just so I can show one more thing before I let you go. All right, so this is how to actually run your strategy. To run this on a chart, you're going to right-click on the chart, select Strategies, select the strategy. This is the one that I've made, Simple MA Crossover. I'll click Add to add an instance of this. By instance, I just mean an occurrence. I can add this multiple times using different properties. Each one of these is an instance. I only need one. And then on the right, we've got our fast period, our slow period. These are our inputs that we can set. We are now the user. And to actually run the strategy, I need to check the box here for enabled. Enabled actually turns the strategy on. It won't be running until you check the enabled box. So I'll click OK. This warning comes up. I have order confirmations enabled, meaning when I place manual orders, it says, do you really want to place this order? However, this is letting me know my strategy, which is automated, will not be having those confirmations. So it's just a little warning because I have that turned on. So I've added it, and what we see are the slow and fast moving averages. It has automatically added this to our chart, and we also see the historical backtest performance on the chart. And that is because I added the strategy directly to the chart. I am now going to remove the strategy from the chart. You can run a strategy from the Strategies tab of the Control Center without associating it with a chart. So maybe you don't want to leave all those charts open just to run a bunch of different strategies, right? You want them running in the background, but you're not interested in keeping a chart open for each one of them. So to run a strategy without associating it with a chart, in the blank area of the Strategies grid, the Strategies tab of the Control Center that is, just right-click in the blank area, select New Strategy, select your strategy, click OK, and then check the box here for Enabled. Now I am going to enable this, and as I enable it, it is now turned on, it is now running, but notice it did not affect the chart. No indicators, no historical performance, none of those orders are there. If you do not add the strategy to the chart, it is not associated with that chart. So if I want it to show in the chart, I have to add it to the chart. Otherwise, it is not associated with a chart. No indicators appear in the chart. All right, that brings me to the end of our session together. Last question is, if an indicator in a condition has plowed on chart set to true, and the strategy is added directly to the Strategies tab of the Control Center, will any indicators appear on an open chart? All right, once again, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. The answer is no. Because we've added this to the Strategies tab, it is not associated with a chart. Right here, this is what we have. We have a running strategy on the Strategies tab. It is not adding the indicators to the chart. If we want the indicators on the chart, we do have to add the strategy to the chart itself. That's when we're going to see those indicators on the chart. All right, that's all I got for everyone today. Thanks for your time. If you have any follow-up questions, be sure to email us, platformsupport@ninjatrader.com. I want to say thank you for joining me, and happy trading.